It's 1963. The Beatles are topping the charts. JFK announces America's moon mission. And across the Atlantic, a technological arms race is heating up that could end American aviation dominance forever. But this isn't about space, it's about speed. The British and French had just partnered to build something that would make Boeing's finest jets look like antiques, followed by the Soviets. A passenger plane that could break the sound barrier. America's response? A titanium monster with wings that could transform mid-flight. The Boeing 2707, designed to be faster, bigger, and more luxurious than anything the world had ever seen. Airlines were throwing money at Boeing. 122 orders from 26 carriers before the first prototype was even built. The future of air travel seemed unstoppable. So what went so catastrophically wrong that this titanium marvel never saw a single passenger? And how did America's supersonic dream become aviation's most expensive failure? The 1950s marked as aviation's most explosive decade of transformation, revolutionizing the aviation industry from propeller engines into the jet age. With the de Havilland Comet's maiden flight, the dawn of commercial jet travel had begun. By the 1960s, while the Beatles were conquering the airwaves and global superpowers were racing to the moon, a different kind of space race was heating up between the global superpowers, right here in our atmosphere. A race to build the world's first supersonic airliner. Until then, the US was considered the undisputed leader in aviation technology. Boeing's latest 707 and McDonnell Douglas DC-8 had cemented their place as the gold standard of aviation travel. But the times were changing. Advanced military innovations had opened the potential for commercial jets exceeding the speed of sound, transforming full-day journeys into flights lasting only hours. This meant the winner of this technological arms race wouldn't just claim bragging rights, they'd dominate the lucrative world of premium air travel and prove their engineering superiority on the global stage. However, developing a supersonic transport presented a monumental challenge. While the engineering barriers were staggering in themselves, these aircraft wouldn't just require speed, they'd need to be economical for carriers to justify their operation. Up to that point, the United States dominated as the primary provider for every major airline worldwide, spanning from single-aisle to wide-body aircraft, having monopolized the international aviation industry. Consequently, American manufacturers and the government were reluctant to commit billions into a market that was essentially non-existent. But things changed when the British and French partnered to build Concorde, marking the first serious effort to actually build a supersonic airliner, and by 1962, the planning for the construction had already begun. Concorde would feature a unique delta wing for high-speed flight and a droop nose for landing visibility. The aircraft was built with a special aluminum alloy and components designed to accommodate the significant thermal expansion caused by its high-speed flights. And a few months later, the Soviets also jumped into the race with their own supersonic plane, the Tupolev 144. This development worried the American officials because if the British and French were to be the first to tap the supersonic transport market and do so unchallenged, it would have meant the end of American dominance in the aviation industry, and thousands of jobs could be at stake. And Pan Am's intention to buy Concorde meant the risk was too huge to be ignored. So by 1963, the race was officially on. Then, President Kennedy declared the federal government's intention to financially support America's supersonic aircraft program. Manufacturers were invited to present a daring blueprint for aviation's future. The mission: construct a machine dramatically faster and more spacious than Concorde, while delivering the economic performance of conventional subsonic airliners. Following several months of assessment and design analysis, 3 contenders were selected for the final list: North American Aviation NAC-60, Lockheed's L-2000, and Boeing 2707 SST. And after much consideration, it was Boeing's design that was ultimately chosen. With billions in funding, Boeing began its ambitious undertaking. Like every supersonic jet of its time, the Boeing 2707 featured a razor-sharp aerodynamic design. It also incorporated an unprecedented feature for an aircraft of its dimensions: wings with variable geometry. During takeoff or landing, the two 707's wings could be angled forward to enable slower flight speeds and better maneuverability. And for supersonic flight, the wings would sweep backward to reduce the enormous drag forces encountered when traveling at supersonic speeds. The company's aircraft blueprint evolved through multiple versions, including a -200 variant, which featured forward-mounted canard wings at the nose. The aircraft was powered by 4 turbojet engines equipped with afterburners, and to manage the intense heat these engines produced, they were mounted in an unusual location beneath the aircraft's tail section. This rear placement created a weight distribution problem, making the aircraft tail heavy. As a result, the two 707 required additional landing gear to maintain proper balance. While the European Concorde traveled at Mach 2 speed, Boeing wanted to be faster. However, because of extreme atmospheric friction, the two 707's surface would heat aircraft aluminum to hundreds of degrees Fahrenheit, effectively causing it to melt. To counter this problem, America had a trick up its sleeve: titanium. You see, America had substantial expertise working with titanium and similar advanced materials. The legendary military A-12 Blackbird had demonstrated titanium's potential through its airframe construction, achieving blistering speeds of Mach 3.35 while operating at 85,000 feet, dramatically outpacing Concorde's ultimate design specifications of Mach 2. Boeing's configuration also prioritized passenger convenience through overhead compartments, equipped with mesh restraints for personal items, complemented by spacious storage units positioned within aircraft bulkheads throughout various sections, resembling long-haul railway design. Entertainment amenities included retractable screens installed every 6th row in overhead areas, while first-class sections boasted individual displays integrated into center consoles shared between seat pairs, something that no other airline had at the time. And even before this revolutionary design had left the drawing board, carriers worldwide were scrambling to secure these Boeing SSTs for their operations. By 1969, the demand was staggering. 26 airlines had placed orders totaling 122 aircraft, with major names like Pan Am, Alitalia, Delta Airlines, and Northwest among the eager buyers. The future seemed bright, but there was a problem. The titanium alloy required for the two 707's structure was significantly expensive and challenging to work with. And in order to achieve the revolutionary swing wing design, Boeing was stretching 1960s engineering far past the breaking point. Its complexity and extra weight meant multiple design challenges. Eventually, Boeing discovered they were back at the starting point, developing an aircraft with a more conventional delta wing configuration, resembling that of the Concorde. Despite this setback, Boeing was confident they would start construction on the prototypes by early 1967, scheduling the test flights for early 1970. Company sources were anticipating the first Boeing supersonic jet would begin commercial service by 1974, and by the 1980s, demand would justify the development of an expanded Boeing SST model, requiring production of 700 to 1,000 units to meet anticipated market needs. Despite these promising estimations and billions in funding, Boeing failed to see the day. So why was the plane, once associated with the country's pride, never built? The crisis boiled down to economics. Boeing initially insisted that the program's massive expenditure would justify itself through the orders from airlines, but after observing the Concorde's stalled progress and lack of market demand, made US authorities anxious. In fact, Concorde ended up selling just 14 planes for 2 airliners. Moreover, operating these fuel-thirsty gas guzzlers was insanely expensive, and when airlines realized that only a small demographic could afford to fly in one, it meant it wasn't a logical decision for most airliners. The situation was even worse in the Soviet Union. Tupolev not only failed to find a single buyer, but ended up grounding the Tu-144s only 8 months after flying on a single route. And as the US government had scaled down Apollo lunar expeditions during the Vietnam conflict, Washington had no appetite for ambitious spending initiatives. Secondly, there was the sonic boom. Supersonic aircraft generated thunderous sonic booms that remained audible across their complete high-speed flight path. Even if Boeing were to maintain flight at 60,000 feet elevation, its sonic boom could be heard within a 50-kilometer radius of its flight corridor. Estimates suggested that a single cross-continental flight would expose more than 5 million people to these disruptive sonic disturbances. On the ground, the situation was even more daunting. During takeoffs, sonic booms would shatter windows, scare animals, and cause headaches and other health concerns. And as complaints started piling up, governments had to act. Most cities banned supersonic flights over populated areas. Cities after cities, countries after countries, issued a no-fly zone for all the supersonic planes. And the dominoes kept falling. Suddenly, supersonic's greatest asset became its greatest liability. Its marketing phrase of swift connectivity became limited to oceanic flights only. Mounting opposition to sonic booms had expanded into additional environmental concerns. Many feared that countless supersonic jets cruising at extreme altitudes would release sufficient nitrogen oxide to devastate the ozone layer. They envisioned an apocalyptic future where aircraft emissions and water vapor would shroud the planet in an everlasting atmospheric fog. By this point, America's supersonic transport program was delayed significantly. With mounting budgets and wavering public perception, the future looked bleak. President Nixon's government commissioned a thorough review of the program, questioning the long-term feasibility of supersonic transports, and recommended discontinuation of the program. And by this point, many could see the end of America's supersonic dream. With a worsening economic situation, the US Senate rejected any further funding for the project, and the Boeing 2707 officially came to an end. From the outset, the challenge of building a supersonic transporter was enormous. But in the pursuit of national pride and global superiority driven by initial hype, expectations were set unrealistically high, essentially undermining economic viability and, most importantly, the market demand. Following the Boeing 2707 project's cancellation, the motivations that had once fueled supersonic development, including foreign competitive threats and national pride considerations, were insufficient to counterbalance the escalating political, economic, and environmental concerns.